My name is Michael Knipp, and let's talk about Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. My original exposure to this book was from Donna at the Bookish Burrow, who absolutely loved it. But because I'm relatively new to BookTube and mostly explore the adult fantasy side of things, I have heard about Strange the Dreamer mostly in passing and with only very few details. The details I had heard going into this story, which was picked and voted for as the buddy read pick for my patrons, was that 1, the main character is an extremely lovable sweet boy. 2, this book is written incredibly beautifully. And 3, this book is potentially one of the slowest paced books that you may ever read. And with those preconceived notions going in, some of them were proven correct for me, and some of them were not entirely accurate. Because the main character is always described as so sweet and the writing is always considered super beautiful, I was extremely shocked when I opened the prologue to a very graphic and violent death. I mean, not like super graphic, but like I was not expecting it at all. Also, a lot of people criticize this writing as being too flowery or too purple. I, as someone that reads mostly adult fantasy, found it entirely digestible, and while sometimes it was a lot, I think that it fit the atmosphere and the vibe of the story the majority of the time. You see, the story centers around a character named Laszlo Strange, who is a dreamer. He has a very sad backstory, and when we're introduced to him, his primary way of interacting with the world is using his imagination to try to understand things. He's very curious, and as the name of the book implies, he is a dreamer. In real life, my philosophy for children growing up is that imagination is one of the most important things that you can cultivate in children. It can be used as problem solving or an escape or a way to cope with things, a way to create new ideas or stories of their own. It's an invaluable tool set that I hope to cultivate in my own kids. But like, my passion for this issue is why my brother frequently makes fun of me for saying that 2 of my favorite fictional characters of all time are the characters Willy Wonka and Fagin Floop from Spy Kids. It's because these characters have made it their entire life to create entire worlds from their imagination and make them reality. And I love the way that both these characters do these in their stories. Yes, it's corny. Yes, I'm sappy, but it's true. So right away, just on top of this sweet naivety that Laszlo Strange has, I very much value this quality about him and his whole vibe. And because he is the way that he is, and he's so optimistic about the way that he looks at the world in a lot of ways, this is very much a whimsical story. There is a ton of whimsy in the world building and the way that the protagonists interact with that world building. And that whimsy sometimes translates into writing that can be considered a little bit indulgent with describing the beauty of things instead of the utilitarian nature of everything. And I think for a lot of people that dislike this book, that's just too much. It spends too much time in the weeds of the way that someone like Laszlo may perceive the world, the way that he discovers and interprets the history of the events surrounding everything in his life. But for people like me that enjoy that, I think it's extremely well done and quite unique. Something I was not expecting, however, was that this book, while mostly being viewed through the eyes of this Laszlo character who's so sweet and kind and wonderful, it's really dark, and a lot of very dark and violent things happen. And there are a lot of times where looking at everything through this perspective of this very whimsical and personal way of writing, that I felt the oppressive darkness of a lot of these story elements, and I really struggled with the plight of these characters. This was not something I was expecting, because mostly people just talk about the beauty of this story. But the beauty of this story shines because of just how dark a lot of its elements really are. While there are fairy tale elements of the story that can seem potentially cheesy or corny in their, like I said, whimsical nature, the backdrop of having this really oppressive world, I think, really makes it stand out in relation to its peers, anything that I normally read. I was very invested into wanting to know the mysteries of the world, and I loved exploring that through the eyes of the main characters. Because of the unique way that the magic and the world works, Laini Taylor uses third-person omniscient perspectives to switch back and forth between point of view characters in a way that was just mastercraft handling of certain scenes. The way that she's bouncing between different characters' heads and the way that fits with the flow of what's been established. There is some incredible stuff here. And being the type of person that can get invested very easily into characters when I like them, when things don't happen perfectly or go wrong, I had very strong reactionary emotions to a lot of things, including the ending. But before we talk about the ending, I want to establish the biggest hurdle for a lot of people when it comes to something like Strange the Dreamer. This, in my friend groups with genre fiction, I think I've established that I might have the most patience for slow-paced stories of the people that I'm thinking of that I talk to generally. If anyone has had a conversation with me about enjoying slow books and you think that statement is wrong, please let me know in the comments down below, but I think it's true. Strange the Dreamer might be the slowest paced book I've ever read. So there was a lot of people when I was looking at my friends on Goodreads, people that had tried to read it and DNF'd it or did finish it but didn't love it. There was a lot of negative reactions to just how slow paced the book was. I think there's a lot of hyperbole because a lot of people say the story does not start until the 80% mark. This is not true, but the sentiment is valid. There is a lot of time world building when the pieces that can be moved are not being moved actively. So we do have things revealed to us and we have cool moments before the 80% mark, but a lot of the things don't start snowballing in any major way until very late in the book. And if you're the type of person that enjoys fast-paced books or doesn't love overly descriptive writing, then I definitely can't recommend this book to you. But for me, it worked on a level that was both surprising and extremely enjoyable, except for the part that I got really invested in the story. And when the story went the way that it did, and when I didn't realize that it's a duology and the book ended on a massive cliffhanger, I expressed that to a lot of my friends with extreme negative emotion because I wasn't prepared for a cliffhanger. I wasn't prepared at all, and I wasn't prepared for the ending as presented. And I don't want to give too many spoilers away, but when we're talking about a book that is generally described as happy and beautiful, there's a lot of very, very, very horrific subject matter. Even if it's not super explicit, it doesn't mean that this is a light read. Ultimately, I do think that the book may be a little bit longer than it needs to be, but I also binged the second half of this very large and meandery book because it really did have me hooked. My biggest beef is that now I have to fit in Muse of Nightmares, which, hold on, full stop. Muse of Nightmares might be one of my favorite book titles that I can think of off the top of my head that I've read this year especially. Muse of Nightmares is incredibly metal. It's also just freaking dope. I, knowing what I knew about this book going in, never would have assumed the sequel to Strange the Dreamer, this sweet, innocent cinnamon roll boy book, would be followed by Muse of Nightmares. But I'm in for it and I want to read it now. I am so glad that this book was voted to be like the patron buddy read. It's not one I would have prioritized otherwise, but now I am a Laszlo Strange stan for life. Maybe Muse of Nightmares changes everything, I don't know. But I love Laszlo Strange. I'm curious what my audience would think about Strange the Dreamer. I honestly think that if you're here because you want to hear me talk about things like Red Rising or The Cosmere, that may not cross over into enjoying books like Strange the Dreamer. But if you want to step outside your comfort zone and experience something closer to like a very, very long, even slower Piranesi, then maybe something like Strange the Dreamer could be interesting to you. Have you read this book? Let me know in the comments down below. I would love to hear your thoughts. This is a very popular one that's been around for about 5 years now, so I'm sure that lots of people have read it, and I didn't even know that. So please let me know your thoughts on Strange the Dreamer in the comments down below, or if you'd like to talk about it even more, jump over to the Discord, which is linked below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more reviews from me, please remember to subscribe and hit that bell. If you'd like to support this channel financially, and you would like to join in on the patron buddy read picks and voting and actual buddy reads and all that noise, there's a link to the Patreon down below. There's also a link to a merch store and a P.O. box if those are things that are interesting to you. Thank you guys so much for listening to my thoughts. I can't wait to talk to you about this book more. Until next time, see you on the flip side. Come with me, and you'll be in a world of pure imagination. Take a look, and you'll see into your imagination.